you should feel ashamed of yourself.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is brought to you by BetDSI. Use the promo code LOCKED10, that's LOCKED10, and get a $10 free bet and 100% match on your first deposit. Today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by one of the Patreon sponsors, one of my Patreons, Brent Veal. So he is the sponsor of today's podcast. Vealy, thank you for supporting the show with your Patreon donation, and this show is it's for everyone, but it's brought to you by Brent Veal. So thank you, Brent. Brent's been a big supporter of the show for a long time, providing some back-end technical tips as well, and generally just being a great guy to give advice. And now he's supporting the show as well. So Brent, this one's for you. My name is Josh Lloyd. I don't think I mentioned that, but I'll do it now. My name is Josh Lloyd, and you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. That's where you can contact me for any of your questions, DFS or seasonal league stuff. I'm happy to answer any of those type of questions. So hit me up over there, and we can talk about it. We've got 11, dare I say, monstrous games to look at from Monday, and then we've got a 6-game Tuesday to preview. So
let's get to it.
We'll start with the monstrous line of the night, of course, and it has to be Klay Thompson, doesn't it? 60 points. 60. He was pretty unstoppable. 8 triples. You think almost with 63, it was 60, not 63, that's a lot of threes, with 60 points, he'd get more than 8, but he was just scoring from wherever he wanted to. Not a full line. 2 boards, 1 assist. No steals and no blocks, but aside from the huge contribution in points, aside from the huge contribution in threes, 21 of 33 from the field is an absolute monster of a total there. That's really got you a huge head start in your field goal percentage. And then he got your free throws as well, going 10 of 11 from the line. He had 40 points in the first half. He had 50 in under 30 minutes. He could have gone for a lot more, but the game was as comical a game as you could see, basically. And if you weren't a Pacers fan, you would have been just, I don't know, it was almost Globetrotter-esque. It was just the most ridiculous torching of a team I think that you could have almost ever have seen. The Warriors handed it to them, and it was all basically on the back of Klay Thompson. Now some people had concerns about Klay Thompson heading into the season. I had some, and had him dip down in my rankings a little bit. And then when the season started, then it was panic all over the place. But Klay is currently sitting inside the top 40. Yeah, at the start of the year, and we did stress this, that he wasn't hitting his threes, but it was going to bounce back. And it's bounced back in a big way. He's hitting just 39 for the season, and I say just, that's the worst in his career, 39%. But over the last 7 games, he's hitting 47% of his threes. He's hitting 50% of his shots. So those concerns for his shooting percentages have been alleviated. And basically every one of his numbers is the same as last year. Same amount of threes, same amount of rebounds, same amount of assists, same amount of steals. Shooting a better percentage from the field, slightly worse from the line, and giving you an extra 1.5 to 2 points per game, which I don't necessarily... an extra half a point a game. So he's basically doing everything that he did last year, and it's just streakier, I think is the best way of putting it for Thompson. You'll get games like this, and then you'll get the game where he goes 5 of 18. But overall, the production that Thompson's getting you, there's very little that you can complain about. Assuming you didn't pick him in the 20s, which was never going to be an ideal option. Last year, he finished the season ranked 25th. For him to get back to that would have been, I think it's somewhat of a stretch to say that, but he could very easily finish in that position. No worries about him actually getting to that spot and finishing it. He's not there at the moment, but he could end up doing it. And after a very, very slow start, if you happen to buy low, and that's why those first 2 weeks of the season is the best time to pounce on these guys. Thompson, Oladipo, another one of these players who struggled early on, who's starting to get it together now. And hopefully we're going to see a guy like Jokic start to put it together when he comes back from he already was before, but when he comes back from the wrist injury, start to crank together some big games and return to top 50 numbers. So Klay really showing that, no matter what happens at the start of the season, stuff does normalise, and it's normalised in a pretty significant way, backed by this ridiculously huge performance that Klay turned in against the Indiana Pacers. All right, I'm going to take a quick minute to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is betdsi.com. I know you guys love basketball because you listen to this podcast. If you want to get in and use your basketball knowledge to your advantage, betdsi.com is the place for you to do it. They've been in business for over 20 years. They're one of the most safest, one of the top-rated internet business in terms of online sports books. It's safe. There's no concerns with it. It's been around a long time. It's well established. I've been on there before. I've used the site. No complaints whatsoever from me. There's a great special for betdsi.com users. Sign up today and you get $10 free. And you can put that on whatever you want. Prop bets, totals, spreads, straight up victories. Who's going to win the game today, tomorrow. You also got 100% bonus on your first deposit. So you put in $50, you get $50 added into your account. It doesn't really get much better than that. There's great customer service. The winnings get paid out really quickly over on betdsi.com. And there's plenty of wages, not just basketball, football, hockey, UFC, anything you can think of. BetDSI has it covered. It's even got live in-game wagering on all football and basketball events as well. Anything you want, you can play on betdsi.com. So go to betdsi.com, use the promo code, my promo code, which is LOCKED10, so LOCKED10. Get yourself that free $10 wager and your 100% match deposit and start playing and start winning today. Let's talk about the waiver wire line of the night now. It goes to Big Tone Allen, the grind father in Memphis. He was huge for this, once again, depleted Memphis squad. Allen had 19 points in the double overtime game. He had 14 rebounds. He had his customary 3 steals. He blocked a shot. He went 9 of 14 from the field and was 1 of 2 from the line. Last season, when the Grizzlies injury bug struck, he really increased his offensive output, and the bug is obviously here again. So he's having to do it once again, and he's succeeding in doing it. Over the last 4 games, Tony Allen is scoring 12 a game, getting 8.3 rebounds, 2.3 steals, shooting 53% from the field. These are obviously tremendous numbers from a guy like Allen, who, when the chips are down, he just steps up and does what he needs to do. He's battled some injuries himself this season, but he's fine, he's fit, he's firing, and for the time being, he's a guy that you should own in 12-team leagues. During the year, he's a player that has value in certain spots. Hey, I need steals. Who's going to get me 2? Well, there's no one better than Tony Allen that you feel confident is going to get you 2 steals, because he just does that moving forward. But with an extra role, with some extra minutes, the scoring will come. High efficiency scoring. You'll get some rebounding, which he's doing at the moment. 6.5 rebounds over the last 8 games. That's some good numbers for a shooting guard. And you get the steals. He's throwing in half a block a game. The good percentages. Really hard to go past Tony Allen as a waiver wire player, and he was obviously fantastic for Memphis in this game, in that double overtime game. Putting up a really huge double-double and getting those 3 steals, which he does so often. So make sure you're looking at Tony Allen. He's going to have value until at least some of these guys come back. Vince Carter, who's out for the next couple. Jim Ennis, who's out for the next couple. But these guys should be coming back soon. But Allen's still going to maintain a significant role in that sort of mid-20s range and be able to get steals. Just maybe his offense will drop from what he's currently providing, and that's fine. That's sort of what you bargained for. Peter Edmiston on Locked On Grizzlies will have everything talking about Tony Allen, but he'll also, I am sure, discuss the signing of Tony Douglas, who is now with the Grizzlies, and the false report of Chandler Parsons that came out today. We saw that tweeted out on Sportando that Chandler Parsons was going to have to need another surgery that would keep him out for the rest of the season. It seemed really weird when it came across because Parsons is out with a bone bruise. But then tweets from Memphis people said, you know what, this is the same thing that happened when Memphis then came out and denied it, or people said, close to a team source, there's no surgery planned, he's not having a surgery, and the Memphis people said, well, yeah, sure, that's what you said with Brandon Wright, that's what you said with Jordan Adams. And we know how it turned out for those guys, and they just don't play basically anymore. So it was a concern. You don't need surgery for a bone bruise unless it wasn't a bone bruise. Sportendo deleted their tweet. They deleted their article. They put it back up, rephrasing it, saying he could have another surgery which could keep him out for some time, not season ending. And then Chandler Parsons got wind of it and quote tweeted it and said, completely false, get your facts straight. And then the writer of that article resigned. So a really weird half an hour this morning maybe, well, my time this morning, afternoon, evening for you guys over in the States, where the article comes out, Parsons is going to be out for the season, then he's not, then a writer resigns. Really, really weird situation. We still don't know exactly when Parsons is coming back, but he has been seen on court getting shots up. He doesn't look like he's too far away, but just a whole really weird circle of events or cycle of events that went on. So I'm sure Peter is going to touch on all of that on Locked On Grizzlies, making it a must listen to episode when it comes out, which by the time you listen to this, it probably is out already. The young gun of the night, maybe this one is, and now I'm looking at it now for you guys on video, but it just looks like me, and it's really shitting me. It's Sergio Rodriguez from the Philadelphia 76ers. I say young gun of the night because this guy's 31 years old. He's not young, but it's his first year in the NBA, and I give the young gun of the year to players in their first or second year in the NBA. And Sergio's in his first year, despite the fact that he looks as old as me and looks the same as me. He is a young gun. 17 points for Spanish Chocolate, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 triples, and 3 steals. As good a line as you could want. Look, he was a great guy to own while Bayless was out. Bayless came back and he went back to like 15 minutes. Bayless lasted 2 games and then Spanish Chocolate's back in. Now, there's conflicting things with Bayless. What's actually happening with him? He's got a sore wrist. He's continually questionable. But then Keith Pompey, writer for Philly.com and the host of Locked On Sixers, said, Bayless should really be considering season-ending wrist surgery. And so that's an option for him, that he might miss the whole year. So, when Bayless plays, there's no point in Rodriguez. If Bayless is out, then Rodriguez is going to have value at least until Simmons gets back into full playing time, which we might not see until mid-January, end of February. And they're pretty adamant they're going to play Simmons as the point guard, not as a point forward, as a point guard. So they'll play him alongside Ersan Ilyasova and Joel Embiid, and then Bob Coven and Gerald Henderson. They'll play him as a point guard, not a point forward. So that's going to hurt Rodriguez when Simmons comes back, but Simmons will come back, and he's not going to come back and come straight into 30 minutes. He's going to come back and play 20-ish, 15-ish, and ramp it up over the first couple of weeks returning from that broken foot. So Rodriguez's value has got a limit on it. We just don't know where that limit is. Is Bayless back at the end of the week? We'll see you later, Sergio. Is Bayless out for the year? Well, then it's when Simmons comes back. When is Simmons coming back? Is it the start of January, the middle of January, the end of January? When is his minutes coming up? Like, there's so many possibilities here that, for now, you just grab Sergio, you run with it, you see how it plays out, and then you make an adjustment later on. Over the last 3 games, Spanish Chocolate is a top 30 player. It is an extraordinarily small sample size, but 13, 4, and 7 with almost 3 triples and almost 2 steals is as bloody good as it gets. Well, not as good as it gets because there's 27 people better than him over that time frame, but it's still pretty good for a guy that's going to be hovering around on your waiver wire. So go and have a look if Spanish Chocolate is around and grab him and deal with it later on, if those things come true. The dud of the night, Thad Young. 10 points for Thad, 2 boards, 5 of 10 from the field, and the recipient of a pretty significant ass whooping by the Golden State Warriors. Thad was not a player that I was really all that interested in heading into the season. I hated the usage hit that he was going to take. I didn't think that he'd be able to keep his rebounding up from what he did last season, given the way that the Pacers run things. I was just really concerned about what he was going to get, and that has all come to fruition. He was the 43rd ranked player last year. He is 96th this year, and he's actually being reduced even further over the last couple of games, down to 25 minutes a game, averaging just 10 and 5 boards. His customary high steal numbers aren't there. He's at 1.1 steals this year. He was at 1.5 and 1.6 the previous 2 seasons. He is shooting more threes, hitting 0.8 a game so far after just 0.1 last season, but he's taking less than 10 shots a game. He was at 14 last season. The rebound is down from 9 to 6, really taking a significant hit. And while he is inside the top 100 this season, I'm not sure that he finishes inside the top 100. And in a 10-team league, you could consider him a droppable player. I don't think I would. I do own him in a 10-team league, and I am holding on to him. I grabbed him with I think like a $1 bid in an auction. I am holding on to him, but when I look at free agents, he's one of the guys that's ready to go on my team. I've got him and someone else. I don't remember who the other person is, but someone else that's sitting there who are free to go when there's someone else I need to take a punt on. I don't really see too much changing for Thad. The usage was always going to be a concern, and it's definitely manifested that way. And I don't really believe that it changes too much unless he starts getting these steals back up. That's a great way to get his value flying, but it's just not happening. He just seems disinterested. The paces seem to be souring on him as well. So nothing really working all that well for Thad Young at the present time. All right, let's talk about the games. Let's talk about them in that extra detail that we so like to do on this podcast. The first game we're going to talk about is the Denver Nuggets and the Philadelphia 76ers. Good win for the Nuggets on the road against the Sixers. The Rooster, Danilo Gallinari, was really good. He had 24 points. He hit 3 threes, 4 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. So contributions right across the board, and did his thing from the line, going 11 of 12, exactly what you want from the Rooster. Willie Barton, huge numbers from Barton again. You know my story with Barton. Own him for now, no problem whatsoever. When Gaz Harris returns and he's back to full tilt, which might not be full tilt until Christmas, Barton's going to be useful. 22 and 8 for Farton Will Barton. He had 2 steals, he had 2 blocks, he had a triple. He is shooting at a really high rate. And there's one thing that we've learned from Will Barton, is that when he shoots at a really high rate, you're going to be followed up with some 0 of 10 nights, some 0 of 8 nights, some 1 of 12 nights. This is going to happen. He is not a consistently good shooter. He is not a good shooter in general. But for now, with the way that things are happening in Denver, he's a must-own player. The player who's at risk of sort of taking something away from Barton moving forward, Jamal Murray, was ridiculously hot in this one. 8 of 12 for 22 points, including 3 threes. He just oozes class. He's just a really fun player to watch. You know I'm a massive fan of Murray. You know that I think he's a top 4 guy out of this group of rookies, potentially even a top 3 guy. It's him, Ingram, Simmons, and Bender, the top 4 guys, I believe, out of this draft class anyway. And Murray who did cool off quite a bit, and he's going to find it a little bit harder to get some minutes especially when Harris returns. But he's showing out and putting up some really, really nice numbers. Yusuf Nurkic got some extra run, probably his best game since Nikola Jokic has been out. 8 and 10 for Nurkic, 2 steals and 3 blocks. So I get lots of people, do we go and grab Nurkic? That's great, he's performing without Jokic. And no offense to the people asking me the questions, because it's a legitimate question, but I think we get wrapped up in things sometimes. They say, oh, look, he's got no Jokic. Look at the numbers. Yeah, he's flying. Cool, but how about the 2 games prior to that when Jokic wasn't there and he played 17 minutes and was piss poor? Which one is it? I agree that the opportunity looks great for Nurkic, and I am all for grabbing him, but it's 3 games without Jokic, 2 disgusting ones, and 1 okay one, where he still scored just 8 points and still played just 24 minutes, when there is literally no other center on this roster. None. There is no other center. Kenneth Faried is not a center, and Faried played just 13 minutes. So it was a good night, fueled by some defensive numbers from Nurkic and some decent rebounding, but I'm not going crazy. I would add him. I've got no problem with adding him, but I would look to see who am I dropping, because when you've got no competition and you are the center and you've had a inverted commas great game and you score 8 points in 24 minutes and there's literally no other center there, then I go, okay, where do you top out? And is this it? Is this where you top out? Because if that's the case, then you've got it. You can only go down, and it's not going to be pretty. Think about that. Ken Faried, after that unsustainable hot start where he was putting up just defensive numbers out of his ass, he is falling out of favour, and I applaud Michael Malone. I was pretty harsh on Malone to start the season. Faried is not good, and getting him out of the rotation as much as you can is a win for me. 2 and 2 for Faried in 13 minutes. Did have some foul trouble, so that limited him somewhat. I think that Faried is okay to own in a 12-team league, but to me, if I own him in one of those leagues or a 10-team league, he's probably the worst player on my roster, and I will just use that spot for experiments, for trials, for flyers, for whatever. I just don't believe in Ken Faried. Wilson Chandler had 10 and 4 with 2 threes and a steal. This is more what I expected from Chandler for this season. The 26 minutes, the 10 points. He has played completely over his head this year. Well, not over his head, just well above expectations. Improving his efficiency to no end. And I do fear that there is somewhat of a regression coming for Wilson. Jameer Nelson got 30 minutes. Never going to understand why he continues to get these huge minutes. I'm fine with him playing 20, but 30 minutes, it just seems like, what are you doing? But hard to argue with 7, 5, and 4 with 5 steals. So obviously the numbers are propped up by the steals. He's not going to be a must-own guy, I don't believe. And Manuel Mudiay really, really struggling. Only the 21 minutes for Mudiay, 4 and 1. He is going to get dropped in leagues, and I think that's okay. If my team is suited to the sort of crappy shooting that he brings, I would grab him. If he gets dropped, I would grab him, and let's just see what happens. But he is struggling in a pretty significant way at the moment. On to the Sixers. Joel Embiid wasn't his best night. Only played 26 minutes. And this is the thing with Embiid. Wasn't his best night. He struggled. He didn't play many minutes in the first half. Still went 16 and 4, hit a 3, and had 5 blocks. So when you have a bad night, and we could talk about Nurkic. No, Nurkic had a great night. He went 8 and 10. Embiid had a poor night. He went 16 and 4 with 5 blocks. Yeah, really? Like that's how good this guy is. Not his best night, but still just doing stuff. Still just putting up numbers. He took 15 shots. He hit just 5 of them. Just was uncharacteristically inefficient. But then just saves it by blocking 5 shots and hitting another 3. Ridiculous numbers from this guy. Dario Saric, 25 minutes for Saric, 17 points, 8 boards, 3 triples. That's 2 straight strong games for Saric. A lot of people looking to go and grab him in 12-team leagues. Is it a breakout is the question I've seen thrown around. One of them was without Embiid. Today's game was without Okafor. Tomorrow's game is going to be without Okafor and Embiid. So we're probably going to get a hat-trick of big Saric games. He's going to play some center tomorrow, and that's going to really help his numbers. So as a short-term guy, he's an absolute must-own guy for tomorrow. He's one of the best streaming targets out there. Long-term, with both Embiid, with Okafor, with Noel returning to the mix, Saric is going to find it hard to be a long-term 12-team league option. He's an ad, he's a sit-on, he's a wait-and-see, but his long-term value is really capped. But he's going to play some pretty significant minutes in tomorrow's game. Ersan Ilyasova will as well. 17 and 8 for Ilyasova, 2 triples and 2 steals. I would prefer Ilyasova in 12-team leagues to Saric for this season, but he's also going to lose some minutes moving forward. And what about my boy Rashawn Holmes? You know I'm a big Holmes fan. 18 minutes for Holmes here, 11 and 8 and 2 blocks. Just seriously puts up numbers at whatever opportunity he gets, he puts up numbers. Now, Andy Bailey had a great tweet today comparing the per 36 numbers of Rashawn Holmes and the advanced statistics of Rashawn Holmes with Jahlil Okafor's. And I believe, off the top of my head, Holmes was better in every single category bar 2 out of about 16. Andy sometimes listens to the podcast. Andy, you can go check him. I think it's just at Andy Bailey. He's really, really good. And we'll talk about it in the DFS section. No Embiid, no Okafor. It's Rashawn time. It is time for Rashawn to start, and it's time for him to play some pretty decent minutes. And if he had a 20 and 10 game with 4 blocks and 2 threes, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. But when everyone's here, he's just not going to play. Ilyasova, Saric, Okafor, Embiid, Noel, Simmons, Simmons, he's a point guard now, sorry. So we're going to be talking about him as the 6th big man, just buried, but a real talent. Source Castillo is struggling as a starter, and I love this. The Sixers announced him as Source Castillo, Nick Stauskas. They announced Joel Embiid as the process. They announced Stauskas as Source Castillo. Fantastic stuff. Philadelphia 76ers games operation people. 4 points with 5 assists for Stauskas. Much better when he runs that second unit. So it lends credence to this theory that so many coaches have these days. I don't want to break up the second unit. Luke Walton takes it to the absolute extreme, but moving Stauskas out of that second unit has really impacted his play. He'll go back to that there and be that sort of 14-team league guy that he was previously. The next game we take a look at, we look at Cleveland and Toronto. Good victory for the Cavs in the end. LeBron played 42 minutes, 34, 8 and 7 with 2 steals and 2 triples. Kevin Love had 28 and 14 with 6 triples. He was off to a red-hot start in the first half as well. And Kyrie went 24 with 7 assists and 2 triples. So the big three putting up the big numbers. Channing Frye, only the 19 minutes, but hit the 2 threes. We know what Frye does. He's a 3-point stream specialist. Despite whatever his rank may say, he's not a 12-team league guy, and he really hasn't been a must-own player. But getting those threes is pretty useful. Tristan Thompson back in Canada, 14 boards. The 2 blocks is a real bonus. We talk about specialists. Tony Allen is your steals guy, Channing Frye is your threes. Rebounds and field goal percentage, Tristan Thompson is your man. He's going to get rebounds and not a lot else, and that's what he does. Now, J.R. Smith suffered a knee injury. X-rays are negative. He's going to go back to Cleveland for some more imaging and testing. It didn't look great. He played just 10 minutes, and a lot of people still own J.R. Smith. This should be the kick up the arse that you need to get rid of him. I would have dropped him a long time ago. This has to be, you have to get rid of him after this. He's been disgustingly bad since he came back from that ankle injury. This is it. Just move on. Just forget about JR. Now, in his absence, Iman Shumpert will play extra minutes. He had a nice little run at the start of the year. It wasn't great, but it was okay. But it's hardly a high priority guy. He might move up from a 16 to a 14 team league sort of player. Onto the Raptors, DeMar DeRozan. This is early season DeMar DeRozan. 31 points on 52% shooting, 5 assists and 3 steals. So that was great from him. And Lowry went 24, 3 and 9 with 4 triples. Big nights from their big stars, except Jonas Valanciunas. Now the panic meter for Valanciunas rises very high. 25 minutes for Jonas, 4 and 10 on 1 of 8 shooting. Now 25 minutes, people will invoke the hatred of Dwayne Casey. Now I'm not a big Dwayne Casey fan at all, but he wasn't good in this game, Valanciunas. He was outmatched. He was playing poorly, and it made sense not to play him. They went super small. They played Siakam at center for stretches and Patrick Patterson as well. I don't believe there's any need to worry about Valanciunas. If you look at his numbers without any context over the last few games, you'll go, man, this is shit. Like 23 minutes, ranked outside the top 100. Those other games, the Raptors won by legit 30-plus points every game. So there was reasons that he didn't have to play those minutes. You could try out things with Patterson or Siakam or Bebe at center and see how things worked. Today was just a case of the big man just not having it going at all for the Raptors. I'm not worried about Valanciunas, but the panic meter on him is high. This is a significant buy low opportunity. One of the listeners to this podcast, or one of my Twitter followers, said, I've been offered a trade. I get Jonas Valanciunas and J.R. Smith, and I give up Ryan Anderson. And I almost spat at the computer. I went, what? Like, really? Like if you said it was J.R. Smith and Ryan Anderson, and I get back Valanciunas, I would have said, do it immediately. But notwithstanding Smith's injury, this was before the injury, you're getting Valanciunas and Smith for Anderson just felt ludicrous to me. So it is buy low season on JV. As low as you possibly can. Go low. Go stupid low. Go your worst player. Who's your worst player on your roster? Is it Troy Daniels? Throw him out there. Throw Troy Daniels for Jonas Valanciunas. The panic meter is definitely high. The best news I say for the Raptors is DeMario Carroll played 33 minutes. He wasn't good in those minutes, but he played them. 8 points with a triple, 3 assists and a steal. I was very, very down on Carroll. I still don't believe he's a good player. He's a better bad player than Kent Bazemore is, but I still don't necessarily think he's that good of a player. But it's clear that Dwayne Casey is going to continue to use him. He's not going to use a player who I think is better in Norm Powell, and that's just the way it's going to be. So Carroll might be around, and there's value there. It was a nice night from Terrence Ross as well. Don't expect the 4 blocks too often, but 4 triples and 14 points, that's more his style. And after Bebe putting up those insane numbers over the last 4 games, this is more Bebe. 15 minutes, 6 points, 1 steal, 1 block. Still usable in, say, 14 teamers, but it's really tough for him to maintain a spot in a 12-team league, I think, anyway. The next game, the Washington Wizards and the Brooklyn Nets. We had lots of game opportunities to take a look at today. This was the one that I wanted to switch on because I wanted to see Karis LeVert play. We'll get into his debut a little bit later. We talk about the Wizards first. Johnny Wall, 25 points, 13 assists, 3 steals. He looked fantastic in this game. Hit 10 of 19 from the field, hit all 4 of his free throws. He's had a very, very underrated season. Otto Porter has been magnificent. 18 points, 4 triples, 3 steals, and again, does not miss anymore. Just apparently the best shooter ever. 7 of 10 for Porter. Continually finishes at high percentages. It feels just still unsustainable, but more sustainable than it did, say, 3 weeks ago. But I still find it hard to believe that Otto Porter's going to shoot 55% for the year. It just feels like a number that's ridiculous for a wing player. But he just continues to do it. Markieff Morris, for about the first half of this game, was in negative DFS points, and one of my lineups had him in, and I was just cursing. I go, man, you're so cheap, but you were literally in negative. He ended up with 16 and 5 with an assist and 4 steals and had a massive second half, played 33 minutes. His role's not going anywhere. He is under-owned, in my opinion. I know he's a dick. I know he can be a real cocksucker at times. He got another tech today, lots of fouls. Early foul trouble kept him in trouble too. But I still believe he has to be owned. Marcin Gortat played the 33, 10 and 12 with 2 blocks. I'll continue to stress this. If you can get back top 60 value for him, please do it. His value is going to fall off. Scotty Brooks. Yeah, we're gonna monitor Brad Beal's minutes. We're gonna not put a hard restriction on it. Just really keep a wrap on it. Just the 36 for Brad. Then we're really being stringent with those minutes there, Scotty. 18, 4 and 4 with 3 steals and 3 triples. This is not the nuclear Brad Beal that we saw earlier on last week. It's a toned down version. It is still sell highable. I still don't have full look, even if he stays healthy, I still think that he is playing at a level that he won't be able to sustain for the entire season. The ludicrous bench rotations for this team continue. Tomas Satoransky played 4 minutes. Yeah, look, he hasn't been great, but you know who's not great as well? Marcus Thornton and Trey Burke. Those guys continue to play minutes. Admittedly, they were okay in this game, but they're really not getting it done. And Kelly Oubre, after that little cameo last week with 2 strong games, he's back to this sub 20-minute role, 10 and 5 with 2 triples for Oubre, but showing a few signs. So deeper league guys, you keep an eye on him, and he is a guy that if Morris or if Porter go down for and what looks like a serious situation, then you grab him, and I think you might get some nice numbers out of him that way. Onto the Nets, Karis LeVert, he's active, he's ready to go, and he doesn't play at all. So I was bummed. But he's ready. He's in uniform. His ass is on the bench. That is a good start. Brookie Lopez. Man, this guy, 25, 6 and 5, 2 triples and 3 blocks. Remember when we were cursing ourselves for picking him in the 3rd round? I picked Brook Lopez in the 3rd round, man. What a waste. What a bum. Atkinson, the shittest coach ever. Well, yeah. Lopez is flying, and he's flying, and it feels like he's flying at 70% capacity. He could really crank it up, put it into hyperdrive, and go forward another notch. These threes, it is just effortless. And I just think to myself, why didn't you ever do this before? Like, ever. Why did you just never, ever take threes? And now it's just, oh, well, cool. I'll just bang this in. No worries. Weird stuff. He's been great. Shawnee Kilpatrick, 33 minutes. 21, 6 and 4 for Sean. A steal and 2 triples. Continues to be a guy to own whose value may drop off. And Trev Booker returned with Donatas Monteunus going back to Houston. Obviously no risk now to Booker's role. Not that there was a massive risk beforehand, but there's nothing happening now. 14 and 14 for Booker. A steal and 2 blocks, and just continues to be a real surprise packet. Bojan Bogdanovic, 18 points. He's like Klay Thompson, but a really shit version. 18 points with no other stats, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and he does that continually. Yeah, that's fine. He can be. If I saw him, if you showed me a 12-team roster and he was on it, I wouldn't go, cool, you're a moron. I would say that's fine. But if I saw him on my waiver wire, I'd also probably just skip over him. He has very defined skills, very defined categories that he helps in. It helps him in his perception that the category that he's good in is the one with the highest volume, and that is points. And if the person who created this thread on the subreddit, the Fantasy Basketball subreddit, is listening, I'm not having a go at you. And no offense to you. I'm just pointing this out. Someone created a thread the other day saying, what is the highest amount of points you've got in your weekly matchup? And the gist of the thread was, how many points did your team score? Not in a points league, in a category league, because it's so good to see having a huge points total. It makes me feel good. And I go, I understand the mentality, and this is an illustration of why points get overvalued at times. Now, points can be very hard to get. They are hard to get unless you get them with certain players at the start of the draft. The points are concentrated there, but they also are overvalued because people look at it and go, 30 points, 30 is bigger than 5. If you have 5 blocks, it is a lot better than 30 points. But 30 is 6 times bigger than 5, so it seems more important. The roundabout way of me saying this is that Bogdanovic's category is the one that's the highest volume, so it does inflate people's opinion of him, and his other areas where he does hurt you or he doesn't contribute, it makes him a borderline type of guy. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson had a triple 5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Not the best night for Rondae, and still working himself into a role, and really tough to own him at this point. Anthony Bennett hit 2 threes as well for your daily Anthony Bennett update, and Joe Harris played 28. Really, really playing some good minutes here. I think that he will lose some of them for LeVert to get into the rotation, but we don't know if and when that will actually happen. The next game, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Atlanta Hawks. Russell Westbrook triple-double watch. He got it 6 in a row. 32 points, 13 rebounds, 12 assists, 3 triples, 1 steal, 1 block, and a brutal 9 of 14 from the line. He went 10 of 22 from the field, so decent there, but that free throw percentage was a very, very large negative for Russ. But still, in a triple-double league, he is killing it. He's had 11 so far this season. The rest of the league has had 11, so he is he's comfortably winning that category. I hate triple-doubles as a fantasy category. Just really despise it. But if you're in that league, or you've got triple-double bonuses in a points league, or in DFS, there's triple-double bonuses, he's clearly carrying the day. Vic Oladipo, solid without being spectacular, 14, 6, and 2. And Anthony Morrow really coming from nowhere. Now, Billy Donovan just refused to play him last season. He's getting more minutes, and he's doing Bojan Bogdanovic things. He's scoring and he's hitting threes. 15 points with 4 triples in 26 minutes for Morrow. He is one of the best shooters in NBA history. I believe he led the league in 3-point percentage in his rookie season. If he didn't lead it, he had a 40-plus percentage, 3-point percentage in his rookie year. Just being a ridiculous shooter. The problem is he can't pass, he can't dribble. He is as horrible a defender as there is, and that's why Donovan just refused to use him. But with the lack of shooting this team has, he's in a role now that means that he can be looked at in more 14 or 16 teamers. But for a guy that was literally out of the rotation to start the year when Kyle Singler was playing ahead of him, Morrow has jumped ahead of Singler and jumped ahead of Alex Abrines as well. Enes Kanter didn't get the start because Steve Adams played just the 15 minutes for Kanter. 10 and 3, and this is the downside of Enes. Well, Domantas Sabonis had 4, 1, and 2 with a steal and a block. Still looks really good, Sabonis, but it's a long-term thing. Now, I'm surprised that Adams played. He wasn't awesome. 12 of 10 and just 2 of 5 from the line. Not a great night from Adams. And after I talked up Andre Robertson a lot yesterday, well, he sort of let me down. He still did block a shot, but just the 4 points and 3 rebounds. 38 minutes is encouraging. He'll be better. He is a 12-team guy to consider without being a must-own guy. The Hawks lost again, so congratulations, maybe? No, probably not. Dennis Schroeder, he is flying, so that's great if you own Schroeder. 17, 6, and 8 for Big Dennis. 2 steals and a triple there. Really, after a lot of threads were popping up in message boards around the fantasy community, do I drop Dennis Schroeder? This guy's a bum, waste of a pick. He has been on fire, and that was the time when he was the real buy low. For now, he is leading this team in a lot of areas. Kyle Korver moved to the bench. They put Thabo Sefolosha in the starting lineup, and Korver played probably one of his best games of the year. 15 points, including 3 threes, with 2 steals. By no means is this an indication to me to go and grab Korver. As for Thabo, 33 minutes, 6, 3, and 2. Defensively got it done. 4 steals and 2 blocks, and you know what that is for Thabo. The questions will come, is he a guy to own? Well, he's not a guy to own, if that makes any sense without me feeling like a cop-out. Hardly a high priority target, but definitely with those defensive abilities, he can be a player, and the occasional offensive outburst, I think it takes the Chicago Bulls to allow that to happen, but the occasional offensive performance, Thabo is now more in consideration. Mike Muscala much prefers this bench role with Paul Millsap back 11 and 5, while Millsap went 24, 5, and 4 with 3 steals for one of his better nights of the year. Dwight Howard was horrible. 6 and 7. Now, Howard started off this season really well, and he has been useless recently. 6 and 7 in 19 minutes. And speaking of useless, Kent Bazemore is a very bad basketball player. 0 points with 4 rebounds and 3 assists, 0 of 7 from the field. The guy's confidence is done. He's shaken. He can go home and sleep on his pile of money with many beautiful ladies. Shout out to McBain. But he's really bad. He's just not good. I'm sorry. He can be owned in leagues because he's been getting a lot of defensive numbers. But if they're going to run this Thabo-Korver combination more, which they did today, then he's finished. There's no point. To me, he's probably a guy that's your 12th best player around that area, and that makes him close to a drop without being an absolute drop. But he just isn't good, and he is really struggling with this team at the moment, and they are struggling, I guess, in some large part due to him. The San Antonio Spurs and the Milwaukee Bucks, big game for Gasol. Big men tend to do well against the Bucks. 15 and 9 in 27 minutes for power, 2 triples and a block. A nice performance. While LaMarcus Aldridge also got back into the swing of things. It takes Milwaukee to do that, I guess. 18, 9 and 5 with a 1-1 for LMA, while Kawhi had 21 and 9 with 2 steals. So the big guys putting up some big numbers. Tone Parker suffered a knee issue. Banged knees with Dellavedova. Looked like he was in a lot of trouble. Didn't appear too serious in the end, but he could, given he's already had knee problems this year and those quad issues, he could very easily miss some time, and that would mean more Patty Mills and more Nicholas Laprovatola. We were talking about Mills the other day, I believe, on Basketball Monster, how he's been shooting like 52% from the field, which just felt, I think he's like a top 60 guy, which feels just amazingly unsustainable. Today he went out and went 0 of 8 for 1 point, and that is a very, very hard regression. If Parker is out longer term, you want to own Mills. I just don't see him being able to continue 50+% shooting for the season, given he contributes so little in the other areas. Dwayne Dedman's really good. He needs more minutes somehow. 10 and 6 in 14 minutes for Dedman with a block. Definitely someone that we keep our eye on for this team. On to the Bucks. Yeah, cool. Giannis, 22 and 11, 2 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 1 triple. Big percentages. Like, what more does this guy need to do? Well, Jabari Parker had a really full line, especially for him. 23, 8 and 3 with a 1-1 for Jabari there as well. Johnny Henson, just the 26 minutes. A kid not going full Henson. 8 and 5, 1 steal, 3 blocks. I think that's more representative of what we can expect from Henson moving forward. While Greggy Monroe played the 21 and went 10 and 13. I think that Monroe is a 12-team league guy, especially if you're sitting in the top 4 or 5 of a league, just to hold and just see what happens, because if there's anyone who is not afraid to make a move to a lineup, even if it makes no sense, it's Jason Kidd. The problem is that he has a real issue with Greg Monroe. There's whatever the issue is, he has got a real concern. But Monroe, with any other coach with this team, he would play 28 to 30 minutes and he would be a top 50 guy. Kidd could revert back to that, but with all the changes that Kidd's made, Monroe starting has not been one of them. Mirza Teletovic is back in the good graces, but that doesn't mean we need to get too interested there. While Dellavedova got 32 minutes and didn't contribute a huge amount, while Tone Snell continues to be terrible and continues to be reserved for deeper leagues only. The next game is the Boston Celtics and the Houston Rockets. Al Horford, 21, 6 and 9 assists. That's a huge assist night for Horford. 1 steal and 2 blocks. He was the best of the Celtics, while Isaiah went 20 points, had 3 assists and 2 steals. And Avery Bradley pulled down another 10 boards as well. So just pretty standard production nights from those guys, while Jay Crowder got the 36 minutes and had 12, 3 and 5. So good nights from the core 4 players there. They also made a change to the starting lineup. Amir Johnson went to the bench and basically out of the rotation, less than 5 minutes for Amir Johnson, while Jonas Jerebko got a start. And Jerebko was decent. He played 21 minutes, he had 6 points, both from triples, 5 rebounds, a steal and a block. Jerebko had some really good stretches in the playoffs last season when he was starting, but do I believe that he is someone that we're running to grab in 12-team leagues? Of course not. You're in a 20-team league, 18-team league, 16-team league, now's the time. We look at his ownership percentage, it's blank. So he's around in lots of spots. He's probably not anymore, but if your league's a little bit slow off the mark, go grab Jonas Jerebko, because he does have a game that is relatively fantasy-friendly. Kelly Olynyk still just can't get a big enough role, but he's always a name to watch out for. And Marcus Smart turned in one of his better performances in the last couple of weeks. 13, 5 and 2 with a block, a crazy block as well, with a block and a 3. And I do like Smart's upside. I can understand any frustration you have with Smart. So if you drop him, I don't think that people are going to be all over grabbing you, but I still believe that he is going to finish as a top 100 player this year. James Harden's been a little bit quiet in the last couple of games, but 37, 8 and 8 with 3 steals and 3 triples and 18 of 18 from the line sort of said, well, cool, I'm here. Just deal with it. Eric Gordon, another big one, 19 points with 4 triples and a block. Was a nice night for Gordo. Did have a bit of an ankle problem though, so we'll see how that pulls up. Trevor Ariza played through his back spasms, 15 and 8 with 3 triples and 2 blocks. And Clint Capella limited, which is very frustrating. 22 minutes for Capella, still producing though. 11 and 9, a steal and a block, and was efficient. It just shits you that D'Antoni does that. Now Montrezl Harrell in the rotation ahead of Nene. 19 minutes for Harrell, 8 minutes for Nene. The addition of Donatas Motiejunas is going to be interesting. I don't think that Motiejunas is playing 20 plus minutes. I think that Motiejunas is a guy you might look at in a 20-team league that the Rockets waived Bobby Brown. Maybe in an 18-team league, you look at Motiejunas. It's going to cost maybe 1 or 2 minutes off Clint, maybe 2 to 3, 4 off Nene. Maybe take Harrell's place in the rotation completely. Maybe you lose a little bit off Ryan Anderson, who was disgusting in this game, 2 and 6. So those 2 strong games in a row were not there for him. He was just putrid. Corey Brewer loses a couple of these minutes as well, moving Sam Dekker from the 4 down to the 3. And Dekker loses a couple of minutes with Motiejunas coming in as well. But overall, in Motiejunas' fantasy upside is not all that high on this team. As for Dekker, not the best night for him, but still a pretty big part of this rotation moving forward. 5 and 4 with a steal and a 3. I don't really think that Dekker's a 12-team league. I think he can become one. I just don't think that he's quite there just yet. Let's look at the next game. The double overtime Memphis Grizzlies, New Orleans Pelicans battle over the D-Leagues. Marc Gasol triple-doubled, 28, 11, and 11, 3 triples, 2 steals, 2 blocks. He has been fantastic this season. I'll put my hand up and say I thought that he was on a decline in his career because everything that he did last season before the injury pointed to it. And then a big 7-foot man, aged over 30, coming back from a broken foot, no signs pointed to good stuff happening. But they are happening. So, I was wrong on that one. Troy Daniels. What on earth is going on here? 44 minutes for Daniels, 29 points, 7 triples on 10 of 20 shooting. A, he has got the greenest of green lights. He can take as many shots as he wants. B, he is doing absolutely nothing else apart from score. 29 points, 7 triples, score. 2 assists, nothing else. This is what he does. He was as brutally bad as almost any player in the NBA to begin the year. And now, out of nowhere, is just being the... He's literally at a spot now where people ask me questions and go, should I add Troy? And I'm supposed to assume that it's Troy Daniels. He's taking on just a one-name persona. It's like Madonna. Oh, should I add Troy? And I just go, Troy? Troy Williams? Troy Daniels? Troy Aikman? Who's Troy? He's not that good that he's just Troy now. There's 2 Troys on the same friggin' team. This is great for now. He's scoring, but as I touched on with Bojan Bogdanovic before, he's the headlines, the fame, the accolades come because his category is the one that's the biggest. It's points. And if he has a night, which he could very well do, of shooting poorly, then he does nothing in other areas. And when Carter, when Ennis, when Parsons, when Randolph, to a lesser degree, comes back, those shots aren't there for Daniels. When Zebo comes back and takes his 28% usage rate off the bench, and Daniels isn't taking 20 shots, do you think Zebo's going out there and going, nah, Troy, don't worry, mate, you take the shots. I'll be good just standing here. Or do you think that Fizdale will let that happen? I don't believe that will happen. Daniels is playing really well. I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm just looking long term. We can add him and have no issue with it at all. Absolutely fine to grab. But when you want to look long term, Ennis, when Parsons comes back from his season-ending injury, when Carter comes back in the next couple of games, I think he's out for another 2 or 3, Carter. where does Daniels fit there? But for now, flying. Troy Williams only played the 20 minutes. Still was okay. 11 and 4 with a steal and a 3. Definitely has deep league value, at least for the short term. Andy Harrison played 40 minutes. Didn't shoot the ball particularly well, 3 of 13. 12, 4 and 3 with a steal and 2 triples. I still think that he is fine for a hold in 12-team leagues, and you might be tempted to say, do I add Daniels for Harrison? I guess that depends. Do I want a guy that could score 20, or do I want a guy that could have 4 steals and 6 assists? Because that's the difference, because Harrison's not going to score 20, but he's going to help in those other areas while being probably a piss-poor shooter and a poor scorer. And it really depends. Who is more likely to lose their role first? Is it Daniels when Carter and Ennis comes back, or is Harrison going to lose it to Tony Douglas? I would say it's Daniels, because I just don't think that Douglas is that great, and he played his first game today after being signed and played 8 minutes, Tony Douglas, and he is a fine pickup in an 18 to 20-man league, but I don't think that you want to go and grab him in a 12-man format, because A, I don't even know if he gets the minutes, and B, the ceiling is limited for as long as Conley is out, so that limits what he can do. And I see a lot of people, they want to get a veteran influence in there to stop the rookies. But veterans' influence is fine. Like, I'm old. I'm a veteran influence. Could I help? Probably not. Like, at some point, being shit should override being old. I don't know where that is. I don't know if the point of having Douglas in there because he's played for 8 teams in 4 years, and the dude's 25 anyway. He's not that old, but he's played for these many teams without even being able to stick around and say, look, Andy, if you want to know something, just do the opposite of everything I've done in my career. This is a long-winded way of me saying I'm not sure that Douglas automatically comes in and just takes this job and renders Harrison useless. So I guess if you believe it, and I encourage people to disagree with me all the time. I love discussion. I love debate. I love producing both sides of arguments. If you think that Douglas is going to get given the job, if Fizdale is going to say, Tone, let's lead the way, let's take it, and get 30 minutes, then he produces in 30 minutes. I've got no doubt that he would produce in that time. Whether he gets the minutes is my big concern. Would I drop Harrison for Douglas? I am in that situation in leagues, and I have not done it. But if you did do it, I wouldn't point my finger and go, idiot. I wouldn't do that anyway. But I wouldn't say that's a dumb move. I could say, I can totally understand your thought process. You're banking on a Douglas start. I'm banking on Douglas taking away mostly Wade Baldwin's minutes rather than the starting job after Andy Harrison, who's been pretty okay for this team and led them to a couple of victories without being horrendous. And if you had have asked me in August, hey Josh, will you say that Andrew Harrison is not horrendous when we get to December when he's starting? I would have said, come on, man. Andrew Harrison is dreadful. He's really bad, but he's not. He's actually played really, really well, and he's been one of the most impressive players to me this season in a weird sense. Tony Davis, the issues with him, walking around, limping, holding his foot, the X-ray that didn't happen yesterday. Well, he played 48 minutes, so the Pelicans either don't know about it, which knowing their medical staff, I wouldn't be surprised. B, don't give a shit about it, which again, knowing their medical staff, I wouldn't be surprised. Or C, it's a non-issue. 28 and 17 with 4 blocks. The production you will love. You just hope it doesn't lead to anything. Now, Drew Holiday out with turf toe, sort of came out of nowhere. Eats-one more with a toe issue as well. I think that Drew misses probably a couple more. Now, they don't play again until Thursday night, the Pels. I think that he might miss another game. Turf toe is a real prick. Now, Moore's had this turf toe problem basically all season. He just can't seem to get it right. People in the NFL often have turf toe injuries, and it costs them a lot of time because you don't realize how important your toes are until you hurt one of them. And when you hurt one of them, it just impacts everything you do. This is a real cool story, bro. But I used to play cricket, and a few Americans, that's like baseball, but different. And I was a fast bowler. So every time I bowled the ball, ridiculous amount of stress on my toes. So much so that they just, every time I played, they would just get ripped open. Just skin all over the place, nails cut, broken, and it led to the nails cracking off and breaking and growing into my skin, causing ingrown toenails and infected toes. Well, I couldn't walk properly. I couldn't run. I couldn't bowl. I couldn't play because my toes, which you go, it's a toe, Josh. Like, stop being a dick. Like, play, but it impacts everything. I had to have multiple levels of padding across the toes and tape and reinforced shoes to try and protect the toe. It impacts everything. It is so much to do with your balance. This is a long way of me saying that Drew Holiday missed today. I don't think it's just a one-off game. I don't think that he's missing just one. I don't think he's missing weeks, but I reckon he might miss another 2, maybe 3 games this week. With both Holiday and Etuan Moore out, Timmy Frazier made the start, and Bud Hield made a start and showed us that performance in Oklahoma City was probably a fluke. 8 points in 24 minutes for Bud, had 2 triples and an assist and a steal, and it's never good when Jamal Murray goes off on a night where Buddy Hield struggles. Alexei Ajinça out of nowhere played 21 minutes, 9 and 6 with 2 blocks. I will die saying that Alexei Ajinça can be a decent player. He has his struggles, but he is a guy that I do believe in. It was Langston Galloway who really took the step forward with the injuries to those backcourt guys. 26 points with 6 triples, not a lot else. He's had a couple of flashes this season, and if you're looking for a short-term guy while Moore and Holiday are out, Galloway might be worth it, but we're probably going to be looking in deeper league sort of territory. Still got 29 minutes out of Anthony Brown, though, so those minutes are going to disappear when Tyreek returns. And Terrence Jones, I don't really see the point in holding on to Tezza in 12-team leagues at this point. He had 10 and 8 in 32 minutes, so the minutes were there. He's just not a good player. Portland and Chicago. Dame Lillard, huge, 34-7, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 3 triples, can't ask for much more than that. And CJ McCollum went 24, 2 and 5 with 4 triples as well. So they were really down in the last game, stepped it up big time in this game. A big road victory for the Blazers. Mason Plumlee 10 and 5 with a pair of steals and blocks. A big night from him. And Al-Farouq Aminu returned. Now, he was limited, just the 17 minutes, 3 and 3 with a steal and a block, but he is around on waiver wires. He is owned in 38% of leagues. Go and look at Al-Farouq Aminu, because he can be a guy that just comfortably sits his ass inside the top 120, gives you some nice rebounding numbers, some decent defensive numbers. It might take him a little bit of time, but Ed Davis hasn't done anything to keep the role off him. Myers Leonard fouled out in 12 minutes in this game. Aminu is someone to go and look at. As for my boy Mo Harkless, how did he go? Just a 1-1 with 11 and 8, nothing too spectacular. You know the story with him. And Alan Crabb actually fired up. He had 17 with 5 boards and 2 steals. You just leave him for the deeper leagues, though. Or you stream him in on a night where, hey, maybe I need some points, maybe I need some threes. Maybe Crabb can do it, or maybe he can't. On to the Chicago Bulls. Now, yesterday I spoke a lot about Rajon Rondo and his pronunciation of his name. I'll probably spend a little bit of time on him today. He is just a grade A knob. He is just the epitome of a shit bloke. He is honestly the epitome of a shit basketball player. Tom Haberstroh had a great tweet today that every single team that Rajon Rondo has been on since his playoff run of 2012 has been significantly better with him on the bench, and it just continues. He was out of this game for a suspension, conduct detrimental to the team, which I so flippantly tweeted, which I'm sure every other person tweeted as well. The conduct detrimental to the team, Rondo's been doing that every single game this season with his play on the court. Now, this is something else. He yelled at an assistant coach, but you're yelling at an assistant coach when you were as piss poor as it comes in that match against Dallas. Rondo was out. The problem is that the Bulls' other point guards are just as bad. Well, that's not true. They're not as civvy on defense. 24 minutes for Jaren Grant, 5 and 3, not his best night. They're better off just letting Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Butler run point for a lot of this time and get guys like Denzel Valentine, some Isaiah Cannon, and, man, get Michael Carter-Williams back, because they're obviously missing him. As for Butler, 26, 7 and 5 with 2 blocks and 2 threes. Dwayne Wade had 34, 4 and 4 with 2 blocks, and he has been absolutely amazeballs this year. Dwayne Wade putting up big numbers. And Taj Gibson, a solid 8 and 6 with 2 blocks, but that's nothing much to write home about. How about Nick Mirotic? I have been in the recent times talking about how I really like him as a player. I know he can be a fantasy contributor. I know he can put up numbers, but the role is not there. Well, today Fred Hoiberg said, you have 27 minutes, Nick. You hit your first shot, and that's whenever he hits his first shot, it's on. 18 and 7 for Mirotic, 3 triples, 2 steals, 2 blocks. This is why This is why he gives me a basketball boner. This is why I look at him and go, can you just play 30 minutes? Because the numbers will come, and they will come. But if you miss your first two shots, Højbjerg, fishing hook right in the arse cheek and just reels him back in and says, Nick, you just sit your beard down and don't play. And it is just frustrating. He is talented, and he has been his own worst enemy or second worst enemy for a lot of this season. But this is the talent that he has. Now, I think he got the extra run here with Rondo out. They played a bit of Wade and a bit of Butler at point guard and shifted him into the lineups. He will likely go back to a 21, 22-minute role in the next game and have like 5 points. Now, he scored 18 here. He'd scored 14 points in his previous 4 games combined. So, obviously, not great stuff from Nico. But still, this is the frustration with him. This is why the hope is always springing eternal for a guy like Nick Mirotic. Charlotte and Denver. Where are we with... Charlotte. There we go. Sorry, I just completely lost where I was at there. Kemba Walker, 35 minutes, 19, 3 and 4 for Kemba. Putting up some obviously some great numbers this season. 2 steals, a block. He gets it done for this team. That's just what he does. Cody Zeller, you know my thoughts on Zeller. I think he should be owned in 12s. 12 and 2, hit both his free throws, so that helps that fact that those free throws had been really hurting him this year. A block. I would like him to get more minutes, but fouls did limit him a bit here. Frank Kaminsky went back to being a turd burger. 6 points in 23 minutes. I think that he can still be owned in 12-team leagues until Marv Williams returns. 30 minutes for Marco Bellinelli. He got some of that extra run with Frank out. 16 and 6 for Bellinelli, while Jeremy Lamb had 14 and 5 in 21 minutes. Just continually just knocking on the door saying, just remember me, do you want to grab me? And I'll probably just answer it and say, no thanks. And I'll leave him for the deeper league sort of guys. A 14, 15, 7 line from Nick Batum is impressive, as is at 11 and 12 dub from Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I don't know why I said dub. That just doesn't really roll off my tongue well at all. The Dallas Mavericks, no Seth Curry, so the pencil went for 29. He had 7 boards, a steal and 2 triples. Definitely one of the surprise packets of this season, while Wes Matthews had 16. Darren Williams, just can you grab him? Just own him. He has to be owned. 15 points, 13 assists, 2 triples, 37 minutes. The minutes restriction is off. The shooting was dreadful, but the numbers are there. He has to be owned. Andy Bogut went down with a knee problem. He was not able to return. He played just the 11 minutes and had 6 boards, and Dwight Powell is the man who got the minutes. He played 32. Dwighty had 15 and 7 with a block, but previously when Bogut had been out, it's been Salah Mejri who's been the guy starting. So it was a little bit confusing for me to see Mejri just play 8 minutes. Yeah, Powell is definitely someone to grab. I would consider grabbing Mejri as well, though, because we've seen in the games that he's started that he'll go out there and have 12 and 10 and get 3 blocks. And that's bloody useful if Bogut's going to be out extended period of time. Will they go to Powell? I just don't feel that Rick Carlisle has a huge amount of confidence in Dwight, and he will be up and down, and he won't provide the sort of defensive numbers that what Mejri can. I am a big Dwight Powell fan. I've been a fan of Dwight's for a couple of seasons. But I've got to look at it from both sides. How does Carlisle view it, and what has he done previously? This could be a case of, okay, Powell's already in the rotation here. This has happened midway through the game. Let's change up what we do. Rather than change up what we do and just give big minutes to Mejri, let's just get Powell going out there and see how it works. Whereas the next game when they can game plan it, I think they'll game plan to have Mejri as the starter. That's the way that I'm leaning with it at the moment. It could be wrong, but that's how I think that the Mavericks are going to run this moving forward. The last game of the night, the Golden State Warriors and the Indiana Pacers. Paul George played, so that was good. 21 and 10 for Georgie. Monte Ellis, as Nate Duncan said today, I don't think I've ever seen a player get abused as bad as what Monte Ellis did today. He was on Klay, just one-on-one, and 9 points for Monte with 2 steals. I reckon you've got to consider even dropping Monte. I wouldn't, but he has to be in that consideration. Mighty Joe Young played 10 minutes and had 12 points and 3 steals. I believe in Joe Young. I believe that Joe Young should be in that rotation ahead of Aaron Brooks at times, at least for half the games this year, to get him some playing time. I really like him. The rest of this team, just got smacked. Jeff Teague had 16 and 6. Miles Turner 6 and 5 in 24 minutes, and there's nothing positive to gain from really looking at this box score, except that Kevin Seraphin played, and he played 15 minutes, and Big Al Jefferson played 8, and that's the way it's got to be, little darling. On to the Warriors. Well, they've got 5 games this week. We talked about them yesterday. Are they going to rest? Well, they did. 22 minutes for Durant, 28 and 4 with two blocks. Steph played 29 minutes, 13, 4 and 11. Draymond played 27. It looked like he was going to go scoreless, but ended up with 2 points, 5 rebounds, 10 assists, and 4 steals. And it gave extra minutes to the bench. Ian Clark turned on an Ian Clark hot shooting night for 11 points. And there's literally nothing to be gained from looking at this unless you're a JaVale McGee fan. He played 15 minutes, had 9 and 8 with 2 blocks, and we know he can be a fantasy contributor. We know that he can put up fantasy numbers. It's just not going to be an opportunity for him to do that all that often. I talked for an extraordinarily long amount of time there. That is it for the seasonal fantasy stuff. I'm going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk DFS for the 6 games that are on Tuesday. People, we are back, and let's start by looking at the DFS, by looking at the perfect lineups on both FanDuel and DraftKings. On FanDuel, let's start with Spanish Chocolate at 35.3 and Dame at 53.3. Dame is always in consideration for tournament lineups. Very hard to trust him in cash games. Klay Thompson at 63.9, of course, and Lou Williams, the unstoppable Lou Williams, 54.7. Now, did I completely miss a game in that breakdown? I got the feeling that I completely missed a game in going over all the games. So I think I didn't do Utah, Los Angeles. I probably should do that. Let's just go through this perfect lineup first. LeBron at 57.1. The pencil Harrison Barnes at 42.4. Ersan Ilyasova 32.6. LaMarcus Aldridge 40.3. And Marc Gasol at 62.7. Then we move on to DraftKings, where we had Langston Galloway at 32.75, Tony Allen at 45, LeBron at 59, Kevin Love at 49, Marc Gasol at 70.75, Klay Thompson at 68, Will Barton at 43, and Lou Williams at 58.5. My apologies. Let's talk about that Utah Lakers, guys. Sorry, DFS people, will be coming back to this very shortly. Utah, Rudy Gobert, 14 and 17 with 5 blocks. A big night from him. And Gordon Hayward's really good form continues. 23, 6 and 5 with 2 steals and 3 triples for Gordo. There was still no Georgie Hill, so we had another Dante Exum start, but Shelvin Max getting the minutes. 10 points, 7 assists for Shelvin, but there'll be no return of the Mac after this. Georgie Hill is either returning for the next game on Tuesday, or he'll be back on Thursday. So his return is imminent, so max value, which might be useful on Tuesday if Hill happens to be out, is going to be short-lived. Trey Lyles, nice contributions in many categories, but he is far from a guy that I want in 12-team leagues, while Rod Hood was not a good shooter, going just 5 of 17. But 16, 5 and 5 for Rod is a pretty decent performance, and he may have been dropped in your league, Rod. Go and have a look. As for Lou Williams, 38 points on the back of 40 in the last game, 4 triples, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. He has been an absolute ridiculous star this year. I can't say anything more about what Lou has done. The Lakers, they were without Jose Calderon, so they just refused to break up this second unit except with Brandon Ingram, and they started Metta World Peace. So they started with their backcourt was Metta World Peace and Brandon Ingram. Needless to say, the starting lineup was not great. They got handled, but Lou Williams was great off the bench. Jordy Clarkson had 17 and 5. Some big numbers for him. Julius Randle with a nice 11 and 11 double-double. But again, just very baseless stats. This is very reminiscent of Randle's season from last year, what he's currently putting forward. Brandon Ingram struggled, had some foul trouble, 4-2-2 in 25 minutes, and this is the concern. This is why I don't believe he's a daily changes 12-team league player, and unsurprisingly, Marcelo Huertas and Meta World Peace, not really big contributions for this team. Larry Nance was available to play, but Luke Walton didn't want to use him. He wasn't fully ready to go. If they were in a desperate situation, they would have. And then Tariq Black left the game with an ankle problem, and they still didn't use Larry. So he clearly wasn't ready to go. And yeah, here we are with the Lakers. So look, just ridiculous numbers from Lou Williams. Continues to be ridiculous, and I can't. He is shooting like 5% better from three this year and 4% from the field. I can't help but think that there's going to be some sort of regression coming from Lou Williams. All right, back to DFS now. Sorry about that little change in strategy, I guess is the best way of putting it. Change in not strategy, change in running. You know what I mean. Let's talk DFS. There are 6 games on. Orlando and Washington. The Wizards are favored by 3.5, and the total is 196.5 points. We don't know if Jan Mahinmi is going to play. He's questionable with that knee injury. Obviously, if he plays, it takes away really any appeal from Marcin Gortat at point guard. Johnny Walls at 9,500. He has been flying. Just to put it lightly, not even lightly, to put it accurately, averaging 46 over the last 3, dropped to 48 today, has done very well against Orlando in the past, and no reason for me to think that he won't again. If you're spending up at point guard, he is clearly the direction to go. On the other side of things, DJ Augustine probably starts again. He had 19 points in 25 minutes in the last game, and there aren't many low-price point guards that are really sort of locked in. Let's grab this guy, and that's assuming that, say, Jared Bayless might be that guy, or Sergio Rodriguez might be that guy, but we don't know the status of these players just yet. So for Augustine, he is a tournament punt at 3,900. Lord Alfred Payton, very, very difficult to use him. He's 5,100 at the moment. For the shooting guards, Brad Beals at 7,100. He's cooling off, there's no doubt about that, but I still think he's an okay guy to look at that salary, where Evan Fournier at 56 has been a little bit quiet in the recent games. The Wizards are actually a pretty good team defending shooting guards. That makes him a tougher guy to roster, but far from a guy that to completely avoid. Small forwards, Otto Porter at 6,300, just feels rock solid. The matchup's great for him. Small forwards have done very well against Orlando so far this season. I think getting 30 out of Porter feels like it's pretty guaranteed at this point. The other side of things, Aaron Gordon and Jeffy Green, or who knows what's happening. 3,800 for Jeff, who's averaging 22 points across the last 3 games. You could do a hell of a lot worse than try that in the tournament. You get 3,800, get 22 points, and it's a win. Now, whether that happens again, who knows with Jeff Green, it is risky. And Aaron Gordon, the same story. But I'd actually have less confidence in throwing Gordon in there at 4,000 than I would at Green at 3,800. So poor has Gordon's play been for most of this year. Markieff Morris at 4,700. Again, he was negative today, ended up with almost 30 points. 4,700, you love that. I'd always think he's a pretty solid target in DFS, and yeah, I think he's in another good spot here to put up some numbers. Serge Ibaka has been playing fantastically, and he's only priced at 6,500. I think that you can definitely use Serge Ibaka here with the way that he's going at the moment. No problems whatsoever with getting him into a lineup. At centre, Bismack Biyombo at 4,300. I think his upside is severely limited, but in cash, if you're looking to roster a cheap centre, which I don't think is necessarily the right move on Tuesday, I think most of your money wants to go to some higher price centres like Hassan Whiteside or a Marc Gasol and go cheap at some other areas. But if you want to go cheap at centre, Bismack's your guy at 4,300. Get your 22, 23 points out of him without expecting too much upside there. Marcin Gortat at 64. Back-to-back with Mahinmi potentially playing, it makes it really tough to roster Gortat. He had just 30 points today. He's been up and down, I think is fair to say, but when Mahinmi's back, it's going to be harder for him to put up the sort of numbers that he needs to. As for Nick Vucevic, really impressive stuff, but the salary is too high. He's at 7,400, so I don't like using him at that salary. It just feels too high for the limit on the minutes that he's currently getting. Let's talk Chicago and Detroit. The Pistons are favored by 5.5. The Bulls are coming off a back-to-back here, and the total is 198. Rajon Rondo should be back from his suspension, so he moves into the starting point guard role. And despite the suspension today, despite a 4-point performance against Dallas at 6,200 in a real positive matchup, I like him. And I like him purely from a DFS point of view. I don't like him as a player. I don't like him as an on-court product. I don't like his personality. But from a DFS point of view, he is a pretty solid pick. Isaiah Cannon at minimum salary. He's getting some extra run at the moment. Really hard to consider using him though. And Reggie Jackson, on some of the sites, you'll see his price is nice and low. At $6,500 on FanDuel though, I'm not all that interested in his second game back to spend $6,500 on him. I reckon you can do better. And obviously the fact that Reggie's back rules Ish Smith out of consideration. Shooting guards, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's at 57, so the salary is decent. It's up there. And I don't think the upside's really there for KCP. He could have a decent game. The Bulls do allow some shooting guards to have some big nights, so I would have no issue in a tournament with KCP. I just don't feel very confident with him in any sort of cash game situation. As for Wade, he is playing. It is the second half of a back-to-back. He played 36 minutes today and had 47 points. At $7,000, he has been exceeding value basically every game. I'm cautious here. I think that the Pistons could smash a back-to-back Bulls here. I think that would then make Wade play, say, 25 or 26 minutes. So there is definite caution associated with Wade. Hilliard, Valentine, the other shooting guards, they're not going to play enough to be impactful guys. I like Marcus Morris at 5,000, just consistently giving you around this 25 to 26 point mark, and at 5,000 on a day where scores are probably going to be low, not like today where I think I scored 330 on Moneyball, and not only did I not cash, I was like well down the list. We had our locked on tournament, 20-man tournament. I think I finished 14th with a score of 330, and for you people in the United States, Moneyball is FanDuel scoring, and I got 330, and I was not close to cashing, not close at all. I think the scores are going to be a lot lower for Tuesday's action. Jim Butler's pretty solid as well. He's at 9,200 on FanDuel, put up another 46 today. Yeah, small forwards against Detroit do struggle. That is something that does happen with those guys when they play them. Not the optimal situation for Jim on a back-to-back with a Pistons team who want to really bounce back after their last poor performance. Yeah, Jimmy is okay at this price, but my money is going to a guy like Johnny Wall or Hassan Whiteside in most cases over Jim Butler. Power forwards, Toby Harris at 56. Big men love it playing against the Bulls, so Toby Harris, let's put him with a big man. 5,600. Can Toby Harris get me 26 points? I have good confidence of that happening. Johnny Lure at 46. No tournament upside really for John, but at 4,600, that is cash. That is, let's just lock it in and spend some money in some other spots. And Nick Mirotic, he's at 4,000. Well, you reap the benefits today if you played him at 4,000 where he got 32 points. But you could have also had the game where he had 6 points in 22 minutes. He is up and down. The salary is appealing. The upside is... And that's not even his best upside. He can go for 40 or 45. But the role, your Rondo back, it doesn't feel great to me that Mirotic is going to play enough minutes to really be useful in a tournament situation only. Taj Gibson's dropped a little bit in his production. He's at 5,900. Don't feel great about him, especially with this negative matchup against Detroit. At center, Andre Drummond has done fairly well against Chicago in the past. He's at 7,800. I always love it when he is priced under 8,000, so he is a center that I can consider, but he is variable. He is risky, and that makes him a tougher play in cash. Robin Lopez at 51 just feels pretty rock solid at the moment. Dropped to 30 today, has done very well against Drummond in the past. Drummond has struggled with the Lopez brothers throughout his career. I think that 5,100 for Robin Lopez is a really nice price, and I reckon you could even be looking at 6x value for Lopez without it being too much of a stretch. The next game up on the slate, we're talking about the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat. The Heat are favored by 1, and the total is 204.5. We have a few guys, we don't know their status. Joshie Richardson and Luke Babbitt are both questionable for Miami. We've got James Johnson that's out already. Justice Winslow is out as well. And then for the Knicks, Courtney Lee is questionable with his ankle injury. Let's talk point guards. We'll look at Goran Dragic, who's at $7,000. The Knicks, very difficult for point guards to put up fantasy numbers against. Whatever the reason, that's just what's happening. The point guards have really been under average when playing this team. Now, Dragic has been shouldering a pretty huge load with all these injuries. He's well rested. I don't hate it. I think 7,000 might be a little bit too high, but it's definitely not steering me away, and you'll see on some of the other sites he's priced a bit cheaper, and I'm all aboard that. As for Tyler Johnson, he's back up at 5,200. With all these guys out, I think that Johnson at 5,200 is also a pretty decent play. He's averaging 29 in the last 3 and 28 across his last 5, and at 5,200, that's pretty much exactly what you want. Derrick Rose at 66. Look, Miami does have an issue, much like New York. Miami does restrict opposition point guards as well. Rose can go out there and have 20 points and have six rebounds and 3 assists, and it's great. It just doesn't necessarily translate into 30-plus DFS points. So not sold on Rose as being a great option, whereas Brandon Jennings, who had great seasonal league value in the last game, just the 21 DFS points, and at 4,000 when he has such a great game, it's not saying a huge amount for his ceiling, so probably a bit of a stay away, but his value is increased if Lee happens to miss. Joshie Richardson or Courtney Lee, they're just questionable at the moment, so very hard to consider using those guys. Wayne Ellington at 4,300 is worth a look if Richardson happens to be out, but even when he gets this opportunity, he's very streaky, Ellington, so I wouldn't be looking at him in cash because he's not a minimum salary guy. He's 4,300. The salary's jumped, and he can be up and down. He played 39 minutes in the last game, put up 18 points. That is not a huge chunk of points for that sort of playing time. Scooter Magruder, he gets a lot of playing time. He does nothing with it. And Justin Holiday, who started the last 2 games with Courtney Lee, one good, one not so good at 4,100. If Lee is out, sure, he is worth a look. Malo's at 7,600, which is not bad. His production's been a little bit reduced lately, Malo. I think he's okay at this price, but definitely not a huge tournament fan for Melo, and he's okay in certain cash situations. I'm definitely not in love with him on this slate. Lancey Thomas, Mindaugas Kuzminskas, no. Power forwards. Joshie McRoberts at 3,600. If Babbitt is out, we already know James Johnson is out. Derek Williams, the Heat had no players last game, and Derek Williams didn't play. So 3,600 from McRoberts, sure. He had 23 in the last game. He could easily get 23 again. 3,600, you are absolutely laughing if he does that. So he is a guy to definitely consider at that low price.
Percentages.
He is at 7,600. He hasn't shot the ball well yet. He scored 40 points in the last game. So at 7,600, he's going to be guarded by McRoberts. He's going to be guarded by potentially Babbitt. Cool. You can fire up some Porzingis, I think. Speaking of Babbitt, even if he plays and starts, I don't think I'd be looking at him. And Derek Williams, who even knows if he gets into the rotation at all, despite these injuries. At centre, I've been talking about Whiteside for a bit. He is at 9,100. That is a good way to spend $9,000 on this slate. He dropped almost 58 in the last game. Joakim Noah is not ideal at all, so I think that you can feel fairly confident of getting at least 40 points out of Whiteside and probably close to 50 in this sort of a matchup. As for Noah, I'll talk about him with some of the other sites where he's minimum priced. He's at 4,100 here. There's a definite risk associated with him, but he could go for 30 and really turn us on our heads, but he has been brutally bad. He is not someone that I would want anywhere near any cash game lineup, but in a tournament, I could understand it, but he won't be in any of my tournament lineups. As for Kylo Quinn, who only played 14 minutes in the last game, got by with 4 blocks and was productive, getting 22 points. At $4,000 at 14 minutes, I don't bank on 4 blocks in 14 minutes, so I will leave Kylo Quinn alone. Where are we now? We're at the San Antonio Spurs. They're taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Spurs are favored by 4. The total is 206. It's a back-to-back for the Spurs. Tony Parker banged his knee. I would have to assume that Parker doesn't play. Ginobili, Gasol, these guys are at risk of rest as well. So keep that in mind that we might have these players out. If we have no Gasol, we're going to get Dwayne Dedmon as an option. If we have no Parker, Patty Mills becomes the guy. If we have no Manu, John Simmons becomes the tournament option. But we don't know any of this just at this stage. If Parker plays, we're not going to be using him, so you can just forget about him entirely. Rick Rubio is down to 5,600. He had 37 in the last game, playing a much bigger role, playing a lot more minutes. In a tournament, absolutely fine with using Rubio, and you'll see he's priced a lot lower on some other sites as well that makes him even more appealing. But I imagine that he'll have fairly low ownership, so he could be a little bit of a steal guy. Shooting guard, Zachary Levine's at 6,000. Yeah, that's solid. I think Levine is a decent guy to have a look at and get 30 out of him with some upside as well. Probably lean more GPP than cash, but not a terrible cash option. Dan Green is strictly tournaments only, averaging just the 10 points over his last 5 games, but the ability to go for 40. So consider him, but definitely don't put a huge investment there. Small forwards, Wigo is at 5,900, so under the 6,000 mark. The Kawhi Leonard matchup is far from appealing, but I don't mind Wiggins at 5,900. I think he can eke out 30 points even in this Kawhi-based matchup. As for Kawhi at 8,300, I don't feel confident about him getting to 40-plus points. He's great. He puts up numbers, but today, even with what he did today, which was good, it only gave you 34, and it's just not quite enough at 8,300. So in a lot of cases, again, depending on the site, he's a fade for me on FanDuel. John Simmons, I touched on earlier. Davis Bertans, who I believe for the announced team today in Milwaukee, we're calling him Davis Burtons, which is ridiculous. And John Simmons, not the announced team, the announcers at the PA announcers. And John Simmons' minimum salary, that's when we look at him if Manu happens to be out. Power forwards, Aldridge bounced back at 6,500. Yeah, look, I think you can consider him without being too in love with him. He's a decent play at 6,500, and Gorgie Jeng is very up and down. He's down to 5,500, so that's a very nice price for Jeng, but it's just a tournament option only. Bielitsa, Dave Lee, no. Centers, Powell at 6,100. He's done very well against Minnesota in the past. They are allowing some numbers against big men. It is a risky play, but I think it could pay off. Look for him in GPPs. Cole Aldrich has been fantastic, but he's up to $4,000 now. That's a pass for me. Whereas Dwayne Dedman at 36, he's a name to watch. If Power's out, I'll be smashing him at 3,600. Karl Anthony Towns at 9,300, getting you 50 points, 53 points a game over his last 3. I would rather Whiteside than Towns, but Towns is a fine guy to pivot away from, or pivot towards, in a GPP. Got a couple of games left now. The next one is Philadelphia. They're traveling to Memphis to take on the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are favored by 7.5, and the total is 196.5 points. Jared Bayless and Zach Randolph, the two questionable players in this one. Let's talk point guards. Bayless, as I touched on already, he's at 3,700, so you may have a punt on him in a tournament. I probably wouldn't. He's going to be more useful if he doesn't play, and that enables Sergio Rodriguez to play. Now, Rodriguez is averaging 30 over the last 3. He's at 4,600. Absolutely no worries about getting him involved in a game if we know that Bayless is out. On the other side of things, Andy Harrison's at 4,300, just a little bit too high for me on FanDuel. He did do very well last time against Philly, putting up 29 points in that matchup, so that works in his favour, but he is a little bit risky at that increased salary. Wade Baldwin, TJ McConnell, Tony Douglas. Well, Tony Douglas isn't even on FanDuel yet, so you can forget about using him. Shooting guards, Troy Daniels at 42, absolutely flying, as I touched on earlier. I think it's a fade in a tournament, because I think that at that salary, a lot of people are going to be on him, and as I said, it's coming on the back of some really, really hot shooting that could very easily drop off. And if, say, Zebo plays, then he is a fade to me almost definitely. But otherwise, I do really like him, and I do think that you can use him in a tournament. And in cash, I think you're going to have to use him, given how high his ownership is going to be. Tone Allen is great at 4,400 as well, whereas Gerald Henderson at 3,700. Had a big game today. I just don't have a huge amount of confidence in that happening. Source Castillo at 37 is struggling in the starting lineup. Tournament-only sort of play for Source. For the small forwards, Troy Williams at 42, letting us down a little bit, especially with an increased salary. It's a good matchup, but it's a fade for me, and no other small forwards listed on the board. Here's where the value comes in at power forward. Richaun Holmes at 3,500. Holmes played 18 minutes today and put up 25 points, but there's no Joel Embiid. There's no Jahlil Okafor. He is going to start. He is going to play 30 minutes, you would guess, at center. They will run some Šarić at center lineups. They'll run some Ilyasova at center lineups. But they're going to want someone to put a body on Marc Gasol at times. So Holmes is a guy that can put up numbers, and he is minimum salary. The chances of Richaun Holmes not getting to 17 points has to be ridiculously low. Has to be. He is in for and his ownership's going to be through the roof. Šarić at 4,100. Love it here. I think, again, a great opportunity with these two other bigs out. Same as Ilyasova at 4,600. You can definitely have a use for him. For the power forwards for Memphis, Jermichael Green, if Zebo is out, he's at 5,200. All aboard Jermichael. If Zebo plays, he's a fade, and I won't be using Zebo even if he does come back. Deontay Davis and Jarrell Martin aren't really worth considering. At centre, Marcus Soles at 7,500. Dropped just 63 today, so that's not much. Clearly, 42 average over the last 5. No Joel, no Jaleel. Yeah, 7,500 for Mark, sure. I think that he can get you 37 points and is one of the better plays on the board. Let's round this thing out now with the last game of the night. We're talking Phoenix Suns. We're talking Utah Jazz. The Jazz are favoured by 7 and the total is 204. We're looking to see whether George Hill plays. That's the only injury concern. Derek Favors won't play. There were some rumours that he'd be back today. It doesn't appear like he'll be back for another couple. Georgie Hill at 6,300. Look, the matchup is beautiful if he happens to play. But we don't know that yet, and given it's the last game of the night, it's going to be risky to put him in. 8,100 for Eric Bledsoe. He's been putting up big numbers, averaging 43 over the last 5, but 8,100 in a matchup against the Jazz, I find it hard to consider him. Shelvin Mack at 36, you would look at if Georgie Hill is out, and it is a positive for point guards, so he's definitely a GPP play if George Hill is out, and Dante Exum is not really going to be worth it. For the shooting guards, Rod Hood's at 55. Yeah, we saw him drop 29 today. Good matchup for Rod. I'm all about him. I think that we can easily get 28 out of him. Whereas Brandon Knight's at 42. Look, he's just really poor at the moment. The projections do like him here in a punt situation. That's the only real way that I'd play him. Devin Booker's at 59, so the salary is under 6,000. That makes him a little bit more appealing. Hate the matchup against the Jazz though, so Devin is not someone that I'm interested in. Small forward PJ Tucker's at 4,200. Still no TJ Warren. I think that PJ is a cash game play. He's getting the minutes, and the production's been okay. Gordie Hayward's production's been better than okay. He's at 8,100, averaging over 40 in the last 3 games. I think that he's got another chance to break 40 here and break it pretty easily as well. So he's one of the better small forward options that's out on the board. Power forwards, Trey Lyles is a tournament play, but really doesn't hold a huge amount of appeal. Jared Dudley doesn't do a lot for me. And Alex Len at 4,700. At least this is an opportunity for Len to play some minutes, so I don't hate actually taking a punt on Alex Len here at 4,700. Marquise Chris, Boris Diaw, 2 starters who probably won't bother the scorers too much. At centre, Rudy Gobert's at 69. Dropped 47 today against the Lakers. Surprisingly, the Suns are pretty good at defending against centres. So Gobert, not so sure that he's worth the 6,900, but he could very well be. So definitely have to look at him and consider it. Whereas Tyson Chandler, it's hard for him to play against Gobert. So probably somewhat of a fade for me there as well for Big Tyson. All right, let's wrap this up by looking at the picks of the day. Over on FanDuel, Augustine, DJ, 3,900, Rondo at 62, and Johnny Wall at 95. Shooting guards, Troy Daniels, 42, Rod Hood, 55. Small forwards, Marcus Morris, 5,000, Porter, 63, and Gordie Hayward, 81. Power forwards, Richaun Holmes, 35, Toby Harris, 56, and Bismack Biyombo with the centers, 43, Gasol, 75, and Whiteside, 91. On DraftKings, Rubio at 47, great price for him. Rondo, 65, and Johnny Wall, 87. Shooting guards, Tone Allen, 39, Hood at 53, and Butler at 89. Small forwards, Šarić at 49, Marcus Morris at 51, and Gordon Hayward at 8,200. Power forwards, Richaun Holmes, 36, Markieff Morris at 52, and Porzingis at 8,000. And the centers, Joshie McRoberts for a $3,200 punt, Marc Gasol, 74, and Hassan Whiteside, 9,600. All right, all you Aussies, let's look at Moneyball. Rick Rubio, 48, Goran Dragic, 63, and Johnny Wall, 86. Shooting guards, Troy Daniels, minimum salary, 35. Levine at 54. Small forwards, PJ, 41, Gordon Hayward, 71, and Kawhi at 81. Power forwards, Richaun Holmes, 35. Aldridge at 59, a really cheap price as well. And the centers, Joakim Noah, minimum salary, 3,500. That's fine at minimum salary for a punt, but that's really about it. Gasol at 71 and Whiteside 88. And on draft stars, Andy Harrison 5,000, Reggie Jackson 8,500, good price for Jackson, and Johnny Wall 17,150. Shooting guards, Troy Daniels 53, Levine 10,350. Small forwards, Troy Williams 5,000, Wigo 11,000, and Mallow 15,200. Power forwards, Richaun 5,450, Johnny Lua 81, and Porzingis at 14,200. And the centers, Joshie McRoberts 5,750, Pau Gasol 11.9, and Whiteside rounds it out at 16.550. We're done for today's podcast, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry about missing that Utah Lakers game for all of you people who have lasted all the way through to the end. I congratulate you. Again, a big shout out to Brent Veal for being today's sponsor. And if you want to be a sponsor of the podcast, it's one of the perks of being a Patreon sponsor. So go to patreon.com/RedRockBball and see the options of a way of supporting this podcast and get a few little perks along the way as well. And of course, BetDSI. Go to BetDSI and use the promo code LOCKED10. Get your $10 free bet. Chuck it on a game. Hopefully win some money and give yourself a nice little Christmas bonus. We are done today, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Lou Williams.